it's on. Now it's on. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this session on the role of entrepreneurship in animal advocacy. I'm Ying at Good Growth, and I'll be your moderator for today. And I'm really interested in this topic because we're also trying to help animal advocates integrate startup and design tools to help launch new interventions. And today we're going to have perspectives from three very different types of people on this topic. So we're going to have three speakers. Each will present for 15 minutes, and then we're going to have some time for Q&A at the end. So I'd just like to remind you, if you have any questions as you're listening to our presenters, please do put your questions into Whova. And if you like other people's questions, please rate them so that we can pick the ones that everyone is most interested in. Okay, so we're going to get started with our first speaker, who is Rika. And Rika is the Recruitment and Outreach Officer at Charity Entrepreneurship, an incubator that launches high-impact nonprofits by providing potential leaders with training, funding, and evidence-based charity ideas. At CE, Rika is responsible for all events and conference engagements for the organization and provides support to other outreach activities. Prior to this role, she helped grow the effective altruism movement in the Philippines and co-founded her own university group. Rika.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Yeah? Okay, so first off, I'm really excited to be starting off this panel on the role of entrepreneurship in animal advocacy. Specifically, my talk will be about what your role might be in launching new animal charities. So for the rest of my time here, we're going to be answering the question of, are you a good fit to launch an animal charity? And I guess some of you right now might be thinking to yourselves, who am I to be talking about this? What do I know about launching charities? And how credible is she to know who might be a good fit? Well, I work for Charity Entrepreneurship, and we are an incubator of highly effective nonprofits. And here on the screen are examples of the charities we've launched in the animal space. Some of them might be familiar to you, including Animal Ask. George, say hi. There you go. And we also have Fish Welfare Initiative, Shrimp Welfare Project, and more. But how do we get to launching these charities? Well, here on the screen is the model of how we do things. So each year, we do extensive research where we try to identify the top charity ideas to launch in a given field. And after this research, we then scour the world to find top potential leaders to turn these ideas and research into living, breathing organizations. So our vetting team will go through thousands of applications and choose the top 20 to go through our incubation program. So what is the incubation program? This is our main project where we provide talented, aspiring entrepreneurs with the evidence-based idea, the training, the seed funding, and ongoing mentorship for them to launch these charities. So during the incubation program, participants develop pitches and proposals to bring their charity to life with the guidance of seasoned experts. And by the end of the program, they will apply for a seed grant from our independent members of our seed network. So in summary, armed with a new co-founder, a great idea, training, seed funding, and our ongoing mentorship in and beyond the program, these participants launch new impactful organizations, many of which go on to be recommended by ACE, GiveWell, and other charity evaluators. And the model of how we do things seems to have been working. Over the last 5 years, we've launched 30 and more charities with programs that can potentially reach 10 million humans and improve the lives of many millions of animals. We currently have an 80% success rate, 40% of which are estimated to exceed the cost of cost effectiveness of the strongest charities in the field. So what does this mean? In other words, they have been recommended by Rethink Priorities, Giving What We Can, Founders Pledge, ACE, and more. The other 40% are not quite there yet, but maybe on their way, and the 20% have shut down in their first 24 months. So, how do we achieve this success rate? We attribute our success to the hundreds of hours we spend on the research for top interventions. We believe that high-impact nonprofits are just much, much more cost-effective than the average. So imagine this. The Steve Jobs of charity won't have a high impact if they are leading a bad intervention. And it may sound obvious, but the difference between an average idea and a great one is often underestimated. Literally. So many people, lay people making donations estimate that the top charities versus the average is 1.5 times more cost effective, but experts have a different opinion. They say it's closer to 100 times more cost effective. The top charities versus the average. So given this, at CE, we have a rigorous and systematic research process where for every research round, we look at 100 to 400 ideas in one area. So for example, in the animal space, then we slowly whittle this number down to the top 3 to 5 that we end up recommending for our potential founders to launch. Again, from hundreds of ideas, we narrow this number down to the top 3 to 5. And these top ideas would have gone through different methodologies to ensure its robustness, including evidence reviews, mapping out the theory of change, geographic assessments, assessing cost effectiveness, and expert interviews. And charities we've helped launch in the animal space and beyond are based on this research. So let me tell you a little bit more about some of them, beginning with Fish Welfare Initiative. So they are an organization that aims to improve the welfare of fish by seeking collaborative partnerships with farmers, corporations, and government agencies. In 4 years, they have estimated to have helped over 1.6 million fish through their programs. And I'm not surprised if a lot of you in this conference have heard of these guys today, but little did you know that prior to joining the incubation program, Tom and Haven, the founders, were recent undergraduate graduates, one of them having studied computer science and the other philosophy. And within months of graduation, they started pioneering work in the animal space. Now, another example that I wanted to share is about Shrimp Welfare Project. So they are the first organization focusing exclusively on improving the welfare of shrimp. Because the disheartening fact is that around 350 billion shrimps are farmed each year. This is 5 times the total number of all farmed land animals put together. Yet prior to Shrimp Welfare Project existing, no other organization was focusing on improving their welfare. Fast forward to today, they are estimated to help 625 shrimp per dollar and are predicted to help 125 million shrimp per year. This is tremendous potential for impact. Now, Andres, prior to joining the incubation program, who is one of the founders, was in consulting, while Aaron was a software engineer. So this brings me to the next portion of the talk, discussing what traits actually make for a good charity founder. How does a computer science graduate turn into someone who pioneers the animal advocacy space to let them think and care more about fish welfare? How do you know if you are a good fit? So, first off, many of people's first guesses are actually wrong. People seem to place too much importance on age, expertise, personality, and existing network. So let me tackle a few of these. Age, so people in their 20s think they're too young, while people in their 30s and beyond tend to assume they're too old. But in reality, there is no preferred age. There are pros and cons to all demographics. We've had 19-year-olds to 50-year-olds join our incubation program. There is no correlation between age and charity success. Next is expertise. People assume you need to know a lot about the charity space you're going to operate in. You need to be specialized and have a lot of work experience in general. But this is not the case. It can speed you up, but it is not required. And this is the same for existing network, both of which you can develop actually and expand as you start your own charity. And last is personality. People assume you need to be confident and extroverted, being able to speak at stages like this. And some of the successful founders we've had do have these traits. They fit the bill. But just as many are humble, soft-spoken, and introverted. So what are actually the qualities that determine a good fit? So luckily we have this short quiz that I'd actually like you to answer. So put out your phones, scan the QR code, look through the questions. So it consists of 24 questions that are quite simple. But when taken together, they are surprisingly predictive and can help you get started into thinking what it actually takes to launch an impactful project. So I'll give you a minute. You don't have to finish the entire quiz because I do want us to not go over time. So minute starts now. So to the people who've just arrived, right now people are answering the quiz. They scan the QR code and just look through the questions and try to answer them. And we have 10 seconds left for this portion of the talk. Okay, so what do we look for? We look for people who are agentic. So what does this mean? Someone who exudes agency or is able to work independently. So this can be exhibited by proactive behavior, someone who's conscientious, self-directed, able to do work and meet goals with little to no supervision. So we look for evidence and track record of this in our potential founders. Another thing is open-mindedness. Are you curious, excited to learn new things, and humble about what you know and what you don't know? And are you willing to update stance in the face of evidence? So if you answer yes to this, then that is good. And last but not the least, we look for impact-driven individuals who are passionate about maximizing their impact in their careers and having this at the forefront on their career goals. And this is what we look for. So while it's good to have these three traits, we don't expect someone to be a 10 out of 10 in all traits to become a charity founder, because this is what the incubation program we have is for. Some people start in the program as a 2 out of 10, on average on the traits I mentioned. Some would enter being a 5 out of 10. Rarely do we see 9 out of 10s or 8 out of 10s. What we do is we harness the qualities you bring to the table and find ways to complement them to get you started to launch a high-impact charity. So, big picture, you'll get these resources from CE, some of which I've already touched on, like the charity idea, but you'll also get a co-founder who you can launch your charities with, and this person will have a complementary fit to you, maybe compensate for skills that you don't have. Next, you'll receive seed funding of up to $200,000 US, mentorship, and access to a community of charity entrepreneurs. You'll also learn these valuable skills that you see on the screen, from basic statistics to measurement and evaluation, charity registration, and more. So, this is the end of my talk. If launching a charity piques your interest, I hope you consider applying now. We've actually originally closed applications a week ago, but we've reopened the link just for the attendees of this conference until October 11. That's Wednesday. So please put in an application if you are even a little bit interested. The first step only takes 30 minutes. And before I close, I did want to say that while animal suffering still exists and is growing, the movement is growing in number and strength too. But our work is far from done, and we need people like you to step up to the plate. Help close the gap between the current state of suffering now to a world where animals aren't harmed for human consumption, sustenance, entertainment. I believe that one of the best ways advocates can contribute to the movement is by launching a charity. So again, please apply and get in touch with me through email or Huva if you're interested. Thank you.
Thank you, Rika. And we're going to now move from an incubator perspective to an entrepreneur's perspective with Samantha. Samantha is the founder and executive director of the Plant Futures Initiative, a 501c3 charity, and the first university program focused on equipping the next generation to accelerate the transition to a plant-centric food system. Samantha received her Master's of Public Health from UC Berkeley, and prior to graduate school, worked for a variety of environmental organizations in the US, Mexico, and India. A native Floridian and a first-generation Mexican-American, Samantha currently resides in Mexico City, where she loves exploring the diversity of Mexico's plant-based cuisine. Samantha, please.
All right, can you all hear me okay? Awesome. Well, it's great to be here. My name is Samantha, and at Plant Futures, we are empowering the next generation to accelerate the transition to a plant-centric food system. So I'm going to talk about our story, how we do that, and ways that you all can get involved. We are doing that by creating a global talent pipeline for the plant-based food and agriculture sector through an innovative curriculum that connects students to jobs and internships in the sector, and through a student advocacy network that has expanded to 30 campuses across the world. How many university students do we have here today? I see a few hands. Great. Awesome. Well, I'm going to start with a little bit of my story because this actually started when I was a university student. So I went to UC Berkeley 3 years ago to get my master's in public health. I was 28 years old. I had been working in clean tech for a few years in San Francisco, and I knew I wanted to work in food systems. I knew I wanted to work in animal advocacy for a plant-based food company. And I decided to go back to school to study public health because that seems like an obvious transition. Learn public health skills, learn more about animal agriculture, the role of food systems, and of course, plant-based diets. I had been vegan for most of my life, so I was really excited to make this transition and to finally work in this field. And I started the public health program at Berkeley, and there was no conversation around animal agriculture, just none. No one was talking about it in the program. No one was talking about plant-based eating. It was really frustrating, even in my nutrition and food classes. They were not acknowledging it. We were not discussing the role of animal treatment, factory farms as a public health issue in the country or globally. So I was really disappointed, and I channeled that disappointment into an opportunity. I was trying to figure out my niche. What am I going to do? Why am I here? And then I met a professor who really encouraged me to start something. He said, well, why don't you just start a program at UC Berkeley on this topic? There are a lot of students interested in this topic. I think it's important. We need to be equipping students to work these jobs. So I took it on as a personal project. I started drafting a syllabus. Didn't really know what was going to happen. I spent probably a year working on this at the university. And I submitted it for academic approval at the university, not knowing how they would respond. And a few weeks later, I get notice from the university that the course had been approved for academic credit. So I end up co-teaching it the first year with my professor. And we had no idea how students were going to receive the topic, because if you don't get high attendance in a course, the university drops the class. So I was really nervous. We launched the course, and over 500 students signed up the first time we taught it. So that to me was a signal that there was interest in this. Students care about these topics. We need to be teaching out these topics at universities, and that was a signal to the university too that how important this topic was. So that was really exciting and also an entrepreneurial learning for me. If something doesn't exist, you have an opportunity to create it, and you have a lot of leverage at universities and institutions to make change as a student. They respond to student interests. They very often do not respond to an outside entity coming in and telling them they need to change the dining halls or they need to have this curriculum. They respond to students. So a lot of what we do is equip students to give them the tools to be entrepreneurial leaders on their campus and really advocate for food systems change, specifically for plant-based food systems and for animal advocacy. So what need do we fill with our program? What exactly do we do? So we are really focused on giving students and young professionals the tools to develop skills and to identify values-aligned careers. 80% of Gen Z employees are looking to work for companies whose values better align with their own. This is higher than we've ever seen in history. Many of the students in our community are searching for jobs that align with their values, that help animals, environment, to help improve food systems in different communities. And we really are missing out on a huge opportunity if we're not supporting students with their career trajectories. This is a huge, huge opportunity in the movement to equip the next generation. They're interested, they're excited, they want to be involved, but they don't have the resources they need on their campuses to work in this movement into plant-based food systems. So that's really what we're doing through our program, is giving them the skills, giving them the tools, giving them the expertise and the knowledge to work here. And we're doing that through the talent pipeline. I'll get a little bit more into it, but we connect students to everything from plant-based food startups to nonprofits to policy organizations, anything and everything related to transitioning to a plant-forward food system. And I'll give some examples of the types of companies and projects we worked with in the past. So starting with our curriculum. We are providing curriculum on university campuses to teach students about plant-based food systems and to connect them to jobs through applied learning experiences. The first part of our curriculum is our introduction to plant-based food systems. We have expanded this to several campuses across the US, and next year we're actually launching across all 9 University of California campuses. And this is what we call a fast-track introduction to plant-based food systems. So we introduce students to everything climate, animal advocacy, entrepreneurship, innovation, social equity, anything related to the plant-based food system. We kind of show them the entire system so that they can see where they're interested in, where they want to contribute. And then through our Challenge Lab course, which is the second part of our class, we actually pair students directly with mentors from many different companies. So these are some of the companies that we've worked with. And they work on a real project with that company, an innovation challenge that that company or organization is having. To transition, whether it's launching a new product, a go-to product market strategy, or a new policy initiative, greener by default, adding more plant-based options on the menus. We expose them to a whole variety of different projects, and they work directly with mentors from those companies who work with them for an entire semester. They deliver a solution to the company at the end of the semester. And one of the really exciting things is after we launched this course the first semester, several students got job and internship offers from these companies. So we really saw an opportunity, not just in academia, but beyond, connecting them to careers and opportunities. So it was really exciting to see that. And for the companies, it's been incredible as well because they have an opportunity to connect to the next generation of talent. As you know, a lot of plant-based food companies and startups are growing very quickly, and they don't know where to connect to talent. A lot of companies spend thousands and thousands on recruitment and still cannot find the right employees. So our program connects them to the company, so we're really supporting both the companies and the students to help grow the sector overall. And eventually we are going to launch an incubator program. A lot of students have expressed interest in starting their own companies and organizations, so we want to support students with that process as well. Community and network. I'm going to talk a little bit about our advocacy efforts on campuses, because the network that students have access to and exposure to is the single most important tool that will help them find a values-aligned career. And I cannot emphasize the importance of this and what we've seen in our program and our students who have come out of our program with mentors, with connections to the industry, are the first ones to get job offers. You can take a million classes on the topic, you can do everything you can on campus, get involved in various capacities, but if you don't have connections and a solid network, it's going to be a lot harder to find a job. So we really support students with building that network. We have a network of hundreds of companies, over 30 universities, hundreds, thousands of students at this point, and faculty, and we really connect them through our ecosystem. And so through our university chapter network, which I'll speak a little more about, we have 30 campuses across the world where students are advocating for plant-based food systems. This is one example of an event that we had this past year at Miami University. We hosted a plant-based Miyoko's Creamery sampling. We had a bunch of vegan cheese on campus. Students were exposed to cheese, loved it. They got samples, products. We had a football tailgate with a bunch of vegan burgers at the tailgate, and these are students who very often would not even be thinking about vegan food or vegan burgers, but we're really reaching a new audience of students. And what we found interesting is that a lot of the students that we've reached, thousands of students at this point, do not identify as vegan. They're either flexitarian or plant curious, and they're moving in that direction, and that's exactly the target audience we want. Those are the students we want to support. If we're only reaching vegans, we're not having a big impact. So we're super excited to see this. We're reaching students, academic programs, disciplines, who are starting to think about the role of plant-based eating in their life, especially in college when they're starting to make food choices independently for the first time outside of their parents' home, and they're starting to think about their jobs. This is a really critical moment in their life where we come in and support them. And we take a systemic approach. So we target students from all types of backgrounds and multidisciplinary programs. So we have everything from public health, MBA students, nutrition, data science, acknowledging that we need students from all backgrounds and disciplines to transform the food system. We cover farming, agriculture, innovation, everything in our program, and we also pair students on teams and challenges where they're working with students from other programs and learning how to each contribute their skills and their perspectives to these food systems challenges. As you all know, they're extremely complex challenges, and we need everyone and every type of skill set to solve these challenges. So these are a couple of the students in our program. They've done everything, outside of our curriculum, which is one of the core parts of our program. Our students are hosting events on their campuses, career networking events, potlucks, plant-based food socials. They're working with dining halls to add more plant-based options on their menus. We actually just started a Plant Futures chapter in China, our first chapter in Asia, which we're super excited about. And they've already had influence on the dining hall on their campus to add more plant-based options. So just to show the leverage that students can have on their campuses. And finally, with entrepreneurship, what we are equipping our students with and tools are and helping them understand that you don't necessarily need to start a company or a plant-based food company to be an entrepreneur in this space. There are so many ways to get involved with entrepreneur initiatives, whether you're a freshman or about to graduate. There's so much you can do on your campus. There's so many initiatives you can take on, so many creative projects, and we really encourage it. I think we need more entrepreneurial students, creative ideas working together to really shift the system. I think we need a lot more new ideas. We need new students, new backgrounds, academic programs and disciplines represented in the movement to really have effective change. And here's an overview of our student chapter network. So these are the 30 campuses. Actually, I think there have been more since this list was made, mostly in the US, but as I mentioned, we are starting to expand internationally as well. So we have a pilot program that we just started in Mexico City this year, and we're starting to expand our presence in Latin America, which we're really excited about, and our second area focus is Asia as well. So we're super excited to expand into Asia, and it's been incredible meeting a lot of you at this conference and thinking about where we can really activate the plant-based community and where there are opportunities. We are also really adapting our strategy because, of course, the strategy with starting chapters in the US is very different in other countries. So in Mexico, it's been a really great and helpful learning experience for us because we have to adapt our curriculum, our entire curriculum are translating to Spanish right now. Outreach to universities looks very different. The bureaucracy of the universities looks very different in Mexico. And similarly in Asia, we are going to need to adapt. And more than anything, we want students taking the lead, local students from those universities on the ground being the leaders for this change. And we're just here to support and activate those leaders. And the students have just done incredible work with very little support from us. So we're super excited to see that, and as I mentioned, we just launched our first chapter in China, which we're super excited about and have bigger expansion plans for Asia as well. And finally, how to get involved. So we have many chapters across the US and globally, as I mentioned. If your campus already has a chapter, we would love for you to join. If not, we would love to support you with starting a chapter. We have a community manager who helps onboard you, guide you, works with your university to help start the community, and we connect you to the other chapters. We connect you to all of our online webinars and events, and we'd love to have all of you who are here at universities join this network. You can email us directly if you're interested. Our email is up there. I would recommend subscribing to our newsletter. Even if you're not starting a chapter, we have a bunch of online webinars, events, resources for students and young professionals looking to start careers in the field, and we're just here to support you in any capacity. So please subscribe to our newsletter, follow us on socials. That's probably the easiest way to stay up to date with our programming. And feel free to reach out to me through this email or talk to me at the event if you're interested in getting involved in any other capacity. And I hope you'll join our network in some capacity. And thank you so much for having me here at the conference.
Well, thank you, Samantha, for sharing a very incredible entrepreneurial journey. And now we're going to move from launching a new startup project to how do you run one with Aneeha, who is a nonprofit operations consultant with over 15 years of experience in the animal protection space. She helps nonprofits set up, improve, and run their back offices so that they can focus on their core missions. She's worked for several leading organizations of all sizes, from multinational NGOs to small startups, and has saved them thousands of hours and dollars by streamlining their operations departments. So I'll hand over to Aneeha.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here today with all of you. I work primarily on the back-end side of starting and running nonprofits, and I've had the opportunity to work with many founders and help them take their projects from just an idea to a startup and eventually help them scale their organizations. So many of us have been inspired here, and hopefully some of us will be joining the incubation programs. So I'm going to share some tips and best practices, especially on the back-end side of starting your own organization. And I'll also share some pitfalls and common mistakes I've seen so that you can avoid those in your own entrepreneurship journey. Okay, so the first area I want to talk about is financial management. There's no need to explain why it's crucial to your success as a startup and eventually as you grow. This can be its own 1-hour session in itself, but I'll share some practice pointers, especially for early stage startups. The first one is always use separate bank accounts. This seems very obvious, but I have seen a lot of founders keep all of their finances, personal as well as their organizations, in the same account, and this is not a good practice. So try to have separate bank accounts right from the beginning. Always use accounting software. I see many founders keep all of their finances in a spreadsheet, and that is okay if you're just getting started, but try to make the switch to an accounting software as early as you can. It'll save you time and it'll also help avoid mistakes in the long run. One recommendation I always have for founders is to take some kind of basic course in nonprofit finance before you start your own organization. Not many of us have training or a background in finance, and that's completely okay, but you should at least be able to read and interpret financial statements to make good decisions. Then another good practice is to build a reserve fund for your organization. There will inevitably be situations where there are emergencies or some unexpected expenses, and it's good to have some funding set aside for these unforeseen situations. Segregation of duties is another practice that's always recommended by auditors and accounting professionals. Usually at startups, you'll initially have a very small team, and it'll just be one person managing all of your finances. This is not considered a good practice, so try to have at least 2 people involved in your processes so as to avoid both fraud as well as human error coming into picture. And finally, try to undergo external audits at least once a year. In most countries, this is a legal requirement, but even if it's not in your case, then try to budget for it voluntarily or find a volunteer who has a background or who's an accountant by profession to spend some time with you and do an audit for you. The next best practice I recommend is building strong governance by your board of directors. So I've seen at many startups, the initial board of directors, they are very passionate about the mission. They act as strategic advisors, but not all of them always have the experience or the understanding of what it means to be a governing body. So some recommendations, if you are an entrepreneur and you're building your initial board, is to build an independent and diverse board, try to minimize conflicts of interest, and ensure that all of your board members have some kind of training in compliance and finance. Ensure that they all understand their legal and fiduciary responsibilities as the directors. And just like you have job descriptions for your employees, you should also have job descriptions for your board, and form committees on your board to oversee specific areas of governing your organization. And try to develop effective relationships between your staff and board, meaning that they shouldn't be too disengaged from what's going on, but they shouldn't be too closely involved in the day-to-day. Their main job should be to manage the CEO and guide the direction of the organization. Another good practice I recommend is investing in proper tools and technology right from the beginning. Most of the organizations, and especially startups in the animal advocacy space, will be funding constrained. And it can seem like you're saving those limited funds when you don't purchase that software subscription. But trying to DIY things on your own in a spreadsheet is actually a waste of your team's time and energy. And it can also cause mistakes which are complicated to fix later on. So I recommend investing in some areas, getting proper tools and technology, like I mentioned, an accounting software. If you have employees and if you need to withhold taxes, then use a payroll software. Use professional emails with your organization's domain. Again, seems very obvious, but I have seen many founders use their personal emails for their organization, which is not ideal. Use password management tools and a project management system rather than keeping things on your email. And if you have multiple donors and external stakeholders, then it's worth it to consider getting a CRM. And some bonus tips for nonprofits are to look for discounts. You can get discounted pricing from TechSoup or asking vendors directly. And research free solutions. Almost all organizations have either discounts or completely free software for qualifying nonprofits. These are some examples of companies that offer it. And lastly, train your team before you roll out any new platform. Create some internal manuals or guidelines for using software at your nonprofit. The next best practice I want to share is about investing in your people. Your initial founding team as an entrepreneur will play a big role in your success, not just in your early days, but also down the line. So it's important to have the proper infrastructure and the people operations processes to support your employees in doing the best work. So Some areas that I recommend focusing on in your early days are your recruitment process and creating policies and handbooks as required by the law in your country and aligned with your culture and core values. Ensure that all of your people managers are trained. They should have some kind of management training. Create a transparent compensation plan and a performance management process for your employees. And think of some alternative or non-traditional benefits that you can offer to your employees, because it's a common constraint for all startups that they can't match the salaries at bigger and more established organizations. So think of other things you can offer while you're building to that point, like paid sabbaticals or more flexibility or professional development stipends and so on. It's worth the investment to engage a qualified HR professional to build some of these things for you, but you can also use some resources that are available online. These are some websites that I've used in the past. You can use tools and templates that you find, but always adapt them to the context of your laws and your organization. All right, another good practice that I recommend is outsourcing as much as you can in your early days as an entrepreneur. Again, it can seem like you're saving on vendor fees if you keep everything in-house, but that usually has a cost in terms of your time and energy when you should be focusing on the main programs and your strategy. And professional vendors are usually experts in their services. They can do things to a high quality and in less time than it takes you internally. So some areas that I recommend outsourcing are your charity registrations once you start your organizations, any renewals of licenses, bookkeeping and accounting, and administering payroll and benefits. If applicable, then office and event management. And the last one is less common, but you can also outsource the day-to-day administrative functions. Okay, so the last best practice I want to talk about is beyond the startup phase. I have seen many organizations get a large grant and they immediately start expanding their programs and hiring aggressively. When this kind of growth happens without building the internal capacity, it can really derail all of your hard work and it can limit your effectiveness and your impact. So I recommend asking yourself a few questions. First is, do you have the sustainable revenue for at least the next couple of years to sustain the growth? Do you have the infrastructure and technology to support more employees and increased program services? Are you prepared to deal with more compliance requirements that come with having more revenue and more people? And have you done some kind of contingency planning for things that can go wrong during this growth? And finally, is your leadership team equipped to support bigger teams and more complexity and the whole change management process? So the idea is not to tick all of these boxes, but if you answer yes to most of these, then you are in a good position to expand beyond your startup phase. Okay, so I want to leave all of the aspiring entrepreneurs with one key takeaway, which is that good ideas are not enough. We as a movement, we are trying to solve a huge and complex problem of animal use and factory farming, but just having creative solutions and good ideas is not enough for success. We also need a strong operational backbone. When startups, when they have robust infrastructure and strong internal systems, they end up saving significant time and money, which can then be redirected to helping even more animals. So if you work at a startup or if you're considering entrepreneurship in the nonprofit space as your next career move, then I would encourage all of you to think about not just your programs and your strategy, but also to think about how you can build these internal capacities at your organization so as to increase your longevity and sustainability. All right, so I hope some of these tips will be useful. If you would like to continue the conversation, you're welcome to reach out to me. And thank you everyone for all that you do for animals.
Great, so a quick thank you to all of the speakers, and then we're gonna enter our Q&A phase. If you haven't put your questions in the app, please do. And maybe we can start asking you to take a seat, and I'll ask a question for all of the speakers. So yeah, maybe I'll start with one from myself. So if there are some aspiring entrepreneurs out there, maybe one question would be like, what's the one most common mistake you've seen entrepreneurs make, and how might they avoid that?
I think for me, what we found is one common mistake is that people wait for them to be ready. And the thing is, you'll never know when you're ready, and even when you're an entrepreneur, there are just bigger problems to solve and bigger uncertainties that you can meet. And so even in our incubation program, 50% of the people who have gone through the program and graduated actually didn't think that they should even apply. So imagine if they didn't apply, then maybe the number of charities that we've launched may be cut down in half. And so this is something that I think people should work on, like getting started before they're even ready, and just take the leap. How about you?
Is this on? Yeah. I was going to say something similar, is waiting too long to get started, and perfectionism, I think, always gets in the way. I waited a long time too. I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur in some capacity, and I always thought, well, I don't have an MBA, I didn't go to business school, I don't know how to fundraise money or talk to investors. And I was totally wrong. I actually learned that most entrepreneurs are not MBA students. They come from so many different backgrounds, and I think we're always waiting for the right moment and for things to align perfectly, and they won't. It's never going to be the right moment. You are going to make mistakes. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. I make mistakes all the time, and you learn, and it's okay. So I would just say, if you really want to be an entrepreneur, just start. Get started and just learn along the way, but don't wait for the perfect moment, because it will never come.
I would say one common mistake that I've seen frequently is trying to do everything on your own, as I mentioned. And as an entrepreneur myself, I have also made this mistake in the past. So I would say rely on your team, learn to delegate, trust experts, and use help as much as you can.
Thank you. Now we're going to move into some questions from the audience. So one for Rika is, does charity entrepreneurship provide long-term support for the charities that graduate from the program?
Good question. So for the longest time, charity entrepreneurship's mission has been to cause more effective nonprofits to exist in the world. And the main way we did this was through our incubation program. But recently, we've actually been launching programs alongside the incubation program, which we actually haven't presented in conferences like this yet, but let me get into it a little bit. So instead of just launching charities, we are taking on an ecosystem type of approach to this mission. So when you're causing more effective nonprofits to exist in the world, you don't just look at the charities themselves, but where they operate. So we've actually launched a foundation program, for example, which is a program that aims to equip individual funders and philanthropic bodies with the tools and knowledge they need to move funds into more impactful interventions and charities. Another program that we're piloting at the moment is actually called the Research Training Program, where at the same time we're training again. We're equipping participants of this program to have the tools and skills and necessary network they need to become impactful researchers. And we expect 3 types of outputs in this pilot program that we're running, because we're still not sure, it is a pilot, where one of the outputs are intervention reports, like new ideas for charities to launch. Another is charity evaluations. So for the existing charities that are in the ecosystem, like how impactful are they and how much should we invest in these opportunities. And the third is actually more on the career building side, where we want to try to move like junior researchers to more senior roles, and like middle stage researchers to like really senior roles. And so that is a thing that we're looking at right now. So instead of just incubating these charities, we're also trying to influence the funding and research that goes into the nonprofit space.
Cool, thanks. So expanding programs in a more ecosystem-like level or approach, which I guess maybe also on the theme of expansion, is a question for Samantha, which is, so you mentioned that you're looking to expand into Asia and you've already started in China. How has the response been so far, and kind of what differences have you noticed between here and in the West?
Yeah, it's been more challenging, I think, starting chapters, particularly in China. We found that universities in China prefer to not have an outside entity come in and establish their presence. I think they want to be more involved with the process. So in the US, it's a little bit different, of course, but what we did with China is it actually took probably like a year and a half of working with Chinese universities to get this chapter started. We activate the students to be the leaders and to be the voices to start the chapters on their campus. So we guide them, we show them the strategy that we've used in the US, we work with them to adapt the strategy, and we give them the tools, and we let them be the leaders. We don't come in as Plant Futures and say, we're gonna start a chapter here. We activate the local community, and that's our strategy globally too, similar in Mexico, as we're activating students on their campuses to do that. So we're really excited. It took a while, but we did get a chapter started in China, which we're super excited about. In our online webinars and events, which we host many of those, we've had many different students from different parts of Asia, which we're super excited about, but we would love to have more presence in Asia. So please do reach out if you're interested in starting a chapter on your campus.
Great. And maybe a final question for Aneeha. So I think you've worked with organizations across like different spaces, not just the animal space. Do you notice anything special about like entrepreneurs working in this field? Yeah, any tips for them in particular?
I primarily work in the animal space, though I have worked for other nonprofits as well. One thing I have noticed that is special about our movement is how much we achieve with limited resources and limited funding. And it's just very inspiring to learn from founders how they've been able to grow their organizations and programs, and I feel privileged to be able to support that in a small capacity.
Great, thank you. Well, this brings us to the end of this session. Thank you so much, all three of our speakers, for sharing your experiences. Thank you everyone for coming, and enjoy the rest of your conference.